Hi. So with the Fnaf movie coming out in October, and Scare Beach DLC just around the corner, I figured what better time than to rank a few of the Fnaf games that have been, published over the years. So how it's gonna work is I'm gonna start with the first game first, say some pros and cons about it, then I'm gonna decide how good it is out of 10. Then, once I do that with all the games, then we'll do a big final ranking to see where they all end up. Fnaf 1 is obviously the start of the series, so it's a bit hard to be very critical on it because it was the first of its kind, but I'll try anyway. I feel like Fnaf 1 really pulls off what it wants to be. I do like how in the first night, it's easy, but it's like you're really getting into it. Then with night 2 introduces, Foxy, which obviously switches up the gameplay a bit, but I do feel like once all the animatronics are active, it does get a bit repetitive. But I would say it's one of the most simple FNAF experiences you can get overall. So overall, I'd say this game still looks pretty good for being a first one. The game is really simple, which is good if you're a simple kind of person. On the other hand, the game does get a bit repetitive and boring, and once you complete it, there's not much reason to go back to it. But overall, I'd give this game an 8 out of 10. Fnaf 2 is a great follow-up to Fnaf 1. You see, with Fnaf 1, it was kind of like the gameplay just kind of got a bit repetitive. Just open the door, close the door, check the lights, check the cams, whatever. After a while, it just kind of got repetitive. Fnaf 2 adds a lot more interesting stuff to the mix. First of all, no doors, you have to check the lights, you have to put on a mask, you have to check 2 vents, and you have to wind up a music box, which makes it a lot more chaotic, especially in the more active nights. Overall, I'd say some pros are just the game is overall fun with how much stuff there is. There's enough content for replayability, and it looks a lot better than the first game. However, one con is that sometimes it can be a bit too much to deal with, but that's really just a personal preference. Overall, a great follow-up, and I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. Fnaf 3 is a very controversial game to discuss. On one hand, people say that Springtrap's jump scare blows, which it does. And a lot of people say that they like the gameplay, whereas a lot of other people don't. So, just letting you know, this is all in my own opinion, so don't crucify me if my opinion is different than yours. With that being said, personally, I really like Fnaf 3's gameplay. I feel like it's one of the most unique from the original trilogy, and it's gotta be my favorite. I like how you don't just have working cameras, you have to fix them. You need to work on your audio, you have to check an entire vent camera. I personally love this gameplay, and I think it's better than the first one and the second one. I also like the addition of the phantoms. They do get annoying after a while, but I just like their presence. It's always great seeing people's first reactions when they don't die. However, Springtrap's jump scare really does suck, but I don't think that detracts from the gameplay at all. I think the Phantoms do a well enough job at doing their own jump scares to actually make it a bit, scarier. And I also love the idea of luring Springtrap around with the audio. So overall, some pros. I love the atmosphere, the dark greens and weird downness. I love the idea of repairing stuff, just unique gameplay overall. The Phantoms aren't too bad. cons, however, is that the phantoms do get a bit annoying after a while. It does kind of get annoying to have to constantly fix stuff. But overall, 8 out of 10. Fnaf 4 is easily the most ambient and creepy feeling. I especially love the mechanic of having to listen for the breathing in order to know when to close the door. It kind of mixes in the sort of style from Fnaf 1 and 2, how where Fnaf 2 you had no doors, and Fnaf 1 you had all doors. It kind of mixes in that sort of feeling, the doors don't fully close when you close them. So it adds a bit more, urgency. I also love the idea how you'd have, not only 2 or 3, but 4 locations you have to look at. It really keeps you, moving all the time. It doesn't make it feel repetitive at all. The minigames, man, FNAF 3 may have had, good minigames, but this has the best minigames. And easily the most iconic scene ever, the Bite of 83. Now, overall, I'd say FNAF 4 has great ambience, a great style of not being repetitive, and just overall a great feeling and great minigames. However, some cons, it does kind of feel like the nightmare designs kind of feel like they're being a bit too creepy, trying a bit too hard, but they still are pretty creepy, I'd say. Overall, 9 out of 10. FNAF 3 might be the most unique out of the original trilogy, but that's only for the original trilogy. Easily one of the most unique FNAF games, period, I think, for at least the not 3D free roam ones. That would have to go to sister location. Instead of just working as a night guard, you're more of a maintenance guy, you know? You work on the animatronics, you do all this stuff, and I just think it's really cool. It's basically kind of a set of minigames if they weren't 8-bit. Because, you have the one where you have to close the door and you have to consistently try and stop it from closing. You have to do the spring lock thing. You have to move about through the auditoriums and stuff, Now, people either love this kind of gameplay or they hate it. I'm on the part where I really like it, and I don't hate it, I just think it's very different. Now, I do really love the secret actual FNAF style night. I think it's really cool how they mix in a bunch of different gameplay. And plus, the soundtrack is really good. I'd say some pros are visually, I love how this looks. Lots of blues and purples. Mixes in well. The gameplay has a really neat concept, having a bunch of just basically minigame things for your quote-unquote job. I don't really have any cons with it. There's not really much that, stands out as a con for me. Which automatically makes this the first 10 out of 10. Pizzeria Simulator might just be more controversial than FNAF 3, where you see people saying FNAF 3 is underrated. Not as many people say the same thing about Pizzeria Simulator. Maybe some do, but not as many. Let's start with the good of Pizzeria Simulator. I like the idea of owning your own restaurant, doing your own Fazbear thing. I like how you can play the arcade games. I think it's a nice touch. And I think it's cool how you can salvage the animatronics, but it's always up to you if you want to or not. Depends on what ending you're going for. The ending is one of the greatest endings I've ever seen, ever. But the gameplay. Now you just have to remember, it's in my own opinion. Okay. People dog on Pizzeria Simulator's gameplay a lot. And honestly, I'm going out on a limb here, but I don't think it's that bad. Okay, I know it's not as good as other gameplay in the FNAF series, but I just see people complain about how they don't like the noise things, how they don't like how slow it feels or whatever. And I get that. I get it can feel like that. But I just personally never had a problem with Pizzeria Simulator's nighttime gameplay. I don't think it's that bad. I'd say if I had to rank the gameplays, this would probably be like number 4. Maybe. But it's just... I just think the gameplay is just way too overhated. Like, I just don't think it's as bad as people say. Like, sure, it can get a bit tedious at times, and it takes forever to get a night done. But I don't think that should, like, detract from the gameplay, you know? Like, it's not meant to be like a short game. It's, meant to be an experience or something. I don't know. Just overall, I just think FNAF 6 is pretty underrated, and I just don't think it deserves as much hate as it does. So here we are, the big final ranking I mentioned earlier. Now I'm just going to go through this really quickly since this video's, taken long enough. So I'm just going to go pretty quickly. You can disagree or agree or whatever, but yeah. There you go, that's the final ranking. That's it.